The cops were halfway up our driveway when my wife, still in pajama pants, calmly held up her badge. The officer paused. The HOA Karen's mouth fell open. "I'm going to need you to explain why you're trespassing on federal property," my wife said with icy coolness. Karen took a step back and whispered, genuine fear in her voice. Oh no. My name's Brian Teller. I'm a mechanical engineer with a thing for quiet weekends and over-engineered BBQ smokers. We bought our dream house on Cypress Grove Lane about 3 years ago. Big yard, no HOA. Close enough to town, but far enough from other people's nonsense. At least that's what we thought when we signed the papers. Then came Janet Drebach, a walking cease and desist notice in pastel cardigans. Janet ran the Cypress Grove HOA like a suburban thief. Despite the fact that we weren't part of it, our lot had opted out 20 years ago. When the original owner fought tooth and nail to keep his property independent, the paperwork was clear. The property records unambiguous. It didn't matter one bit to Janet. She saw us as a threat to her property standards vision. At first, it was petty stuff we could laugh about over dinner. Janet dropped off a welcome packet we hadn't asked for, complete with a list of mandatory lawn improvements and, I kid you not, a VHS copy of a community orientation video from 1998. My wife, Dana, and I had a good laugh watching it on the ancient VCR we found at a garage sale. The production value was somewhere between a high school project and a hostage video. Then came what Janet called her friendly warnings. She'd leave little notes on our door. Always written in purple gel pen on HOA letterhead she definitely printed at the local library. Our mailbox was not HOA standard beige. Our fire pit was a smoke-forward aggression. My wife's unmarked government vehicle was inviting suspicion in the neighborhood. That last one made Dana laugh. So hard she nearly spit out her coffee. We politely declined every interaction. I'd wave from the driveway when she'd march over with her clipboard. Dana would smile sweetly and close the door mid-sentence. Whenever Janet launched into one of her practiced speeches about community standards, we figured she'd eventually get bored and move on to terrorizing someone else. That's when Janet escalated to what I can only describe as suburban warfare. She began sending fake HOA fines printed on official-looking invoices, $50 for excessive dandelions, $75 for non-approved bird feeders, $200 for what she called aggressively non-neutral paint choices, referring to our front door that had been hunter green since before we moved in. The fines went straight into our shredder, which we'd moved next to the front door specifically for this purpose. Then came the voicemail threats. Janet would call at exactly 7 a.m. every Saturday to inform us about emergency HOA meetings we were required to attend. She'd detail the fines accumulating daily and warn about legal action. She claimed our backyard bird feeders were creating a potential avian uprising that threatened property values. She insisted our garden gnome collection was cultish and intimidating to young families. I tried reasoning with her once, catching her during one of her power walks around the neighborhood. I explained calmly that we weren't part of the HOA, showed her the property records on my phone, even offered to buy her a coffee so we could discuss it like adults. She responded by taking a photo of my license plate and muttering something about a vehicle standards violation. Then came the final straw that broke the camel's back. I'd taken a week off work to build a shed in our backyard. Nothing fancy. Just a 12x10 structure to store lawn equipment and Dana's growing collection of power tools. I'd pulled all the proper permits from the city, made sure it met every single building code, even chose a color that complemented the house. I was about halfway through framing when Janet appeared at our back gate, her face purple with rage. She was screaming about unauthorized housing development and threatening to call in what she termed the big guns. I figured she meant her lawyer cousin who'd gotten his degree online. I figured wrong. The police arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was installing the shed doors. 2 patrol cars pulled up, and Janet strutted beside them like she was leading a tactical raid. Binder of bylaws in one hand, venti frappuccino in the other, her chest puffed out with self-importance. From the backyard, I could hear her telling the officers about our flagrant disregard for community standards and dangerous construction project. I walked around to the front, wiping sawdust off my hands, ready to show the officers my building permits. That's when my wife stepped outside, still in her pajama pants and an old FBI Academy t-shirt. She looked at the scene, sighed like someone who dealt with worse before breakfast, and reached for her badge. Special Agent Dana Teller. Department of Homeland Security, she announced, with the kind of calm authority that makes people stand up straighter. Everything stopped. The officers froze mid-step. Janet's Frappuccino hand started trembling. Even the neighbors, who'd been pretending to water their plants while watching the drama, suddenly found somewhere else to be. Dana continued in that same measured tone. This is federal property. That shed you're concerned about? It's a secure storage facility and your presence is interfering with a classified project. Now, it wasn't technically a lie. The shed would securely store things. And my project to organize our garage was definitely classified as impossible by anyone who'd seen it. The officers looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting their weight and exchanging glances. The younger one cleared his throat and muttered something about needing to double-check some jurisdictional stuff. The senior officer nodded rapidly, already backing toward his patrol car. "We're going to go make some calls," he said, which I'm pretty sure was cop speak for "we're getting the hell out of here." Janet stood frozen on our lawn, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She stammered something about sovereign neighborhood rights, which isn't a thing, but Dana was already reaching into the folder she'd grabbed from. Inside, she pulled out an official-looking document and handed it to Janet with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This is a cease-and-desist letter from our legal department," Dana explained patiently, as if speaking to a child. "Turns out that impersonating a regulatory authority and harassing federal employees on their property opens you up to some interesting liability issues. I'd recommend you read it carefully." The letter was genuine, drafted by the federal agency's legal department after Dana had casually mentioned our HOA problem during a lunch break. Her colleagues thought the story was hilarious and were more than happy to help. Government lawyers, it turns out, love flexing on overreaching HOA presidents. Janet's face cycled through several colors, starting with red, moving through purple, and finally settling on a grayish pale that made her look like she might faint. She clutched the letter with trembling hands, her eyes darting over phrases like federal statute violation and potential criminal charges. Word spread through the neighborhood faster than a California wildfire. By that evening, Janet's phone was ringing off the hook. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that night. We knew because we could see the stream of cars heading to Janet's house, each driver looking more concerned than the last. We later heard from our neighbor, Tom, the HOA treasurer and longtime victim of Janet's antics, that the meeting was brutal. The board's lawyer, a real one this time, explained in excruciating detail how Janet's actions had exposed the HOA to serious legal liability. Apparently, falsely reporting crimes, harassing homeowners, and impersonating a government authority were all things that could lead to massive lawsuits. The vote was unanimous. Janet was temporarily suspended from her position, though, as Tom said, the word temporarily was doing some heavy lifting in that sentence. She was ordered to issue formal written apologies to us, to the police department, and to every homeowner she had falsely fined. The HOA's insurance company was particularly interested in that last part, but Dana wasn't done. At the next community event, a summer barbecue in the park, she gave a presentation titled "Know Your Boundaries, HOA versus Federal Sovereignty." Attendance was mandatory for all HOA board members, though open to everyone. She even handed out mini pocket constitutions and bookmarks printed with relevant property law statutes. Janet, seated in the back beside the potato salad, was forced to apologize publicly for what the board called overstepping her authority. She read from a prepared statement with all the enthusiasm of someone getting a root canal, her voice barely above a whisper. She expressed her deep regret and promised to respect property boundaries going forward. The real consequences, however, hit much harder than public humiliation. The HOA's insurance company, after reviewing the situation, required Janet to personally pay the $5,000 deductible for the legal consultation needed to clean up her mess. The false police report she'd filed resulted in a misdemeanor charge and $800 in fines. But the final blow came at the next official meeting, where the board voted, again unanimously, to permanently remove her from her position. Tom told us she actually cried when they took away her gavel, clutching it like a life preserver as security escorted her out.